pretend it's 372 years ago, and we're approaching, by way of the gentle Avon, that lovely little English town of Stratford, where was born the greatest dramatist of all time, William Shakespeare. There, beneath the tall, slim spire of that church, the boy Shakespeare came into being in this very house in the year 1564. An exciting era, for the age of chivalry had passed and the era of commerce and trade was begun. In Stratford was then, as now, this free grammar school in which the lad pursued his studies. And in due course, treading the stones of these very streets to the cottage of Anne Hathaway, came Master Will Shakespeare as a suitor for her hand. But young Will wanted to write for the stage, and so he trudged his weary way to London, where the modern theater was just beginning to make heard its infant howls. We can only conjecture what brought this strange ambition to the country boy's breast. I think some band of strolling players visiting Stratford had sounded the trumpet of Thespis, and he had heard. You've heard that call, little stage-struck Sally, haven't you? And you too, footlight-fascinated John, who has a play tucked away, as Master Will Shakespeare had. A play that he dreams will someday bring him fame and fortune. But even as today, many a budding Bernhardt treks her weary way to Hollywood, only to bury her dreams beneath the uniform of a waitress, Will Shakespeare found London a citadel not easily stormed, and the youthful zealot could only drink in the atmosphere of the Blackfriars Theater while tending the horses of its patrons. But he was able to attract the attention of the proprietor Burbage, and his impetuous enthusiasm soon secured him the job of prompter in the theater. The theater? What a pathetic theater. The stage was only a platform. There was no scenery, and the raucously eating, drinking, chattering audience was literally all over the place. Would you, Sally, or you, John, thank your lucky stars as fervently as did Shakespeare over an opportunity to crash the gates of such an unprepossessing profession? For the actors of the day were a mad and irresponsible clan, and the prompter's task was not an easy one. And manager Burbage had to watch every performance closely. Perhaps some moment like this gave him the opportunity for the first spontaneous demonstration of his incorrigible genius. An actor misses a cue, forgets his lines, and the young prompter substitutes an extemporaneous speech of his own. At first, Burbage is scandalized, but audiences have always had the privilege of deciding on their own amusement, and thus Will Shakespeare wins his first taste of that applause which shall be his portion as long as words are written, as long as language shall endure. As Burbage discovered that the impromptu lines concocted by this youngster were becoming important elements in the entertainment of his audiences, it was not long before the youthful genius was rewriting whole scenes of plays, and then whole plays which were the brainchildren of other dramatists to whom had not been given the genius which was Shakespeare's birthright. It was then only another step to that significant moment when William Shakespeare signed his name as the author of the first of his great historical dramas, Henry VI. Recognition came quickly, as one play followed another in unbelievably rapid succession. He became an accepted figure in the literary world, a world which included such famous contemporaries as Thomas Dekker and Ben Jonson. Yes, our country lad has traveled a long way from quiet Stratford to the Mermaid Tavern. But he would not rest on his laurels. He worked tirelessly, ceaselessly. He was more than a playwright. He was an actor. He was a stage director. And in this latter capacity, he fought stubbornly against the crude traditions of the Elizabethan theater, demanding realism in place of the usual stilted gestures. Now this was the merry England of good Queen Bess, and Shakespeare's fame reached even to royal ears. The result was a command performance. Master William Shakespeare was ordered to appear with his company in a performance at Windsor Castle. There, within those gray stone walls, fantastically lighted by torch and candle, the trembling actors had their day and anxiously played their parts for their royal patron. But their apprehensions were unfounded. The good queen was amused. The good queen was gracious enough to indicate her satisfaction with the humble troopers. And Shakespeare experienced the thrill of praise from the lips of his sovereign. But her approval was a double-edged sword. She gave him another royal command. So fascinated was she by the humor of the buffoon, Sir John Falstaff, that she ordered the playwright to concoct a new drama in which that fat and gallant old rascal must be depicted in love. Thus, within the next 14 days, was born The Merry Wives of Windsor. But Falstaff is only one of the long line of Shakespearean clowns. Sir Toby Belch and Sir Andrew Aguecheek of Twelfth Night. 'Twas 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 't Dogberry and his comic watchman in the immortal Much Ado About Nothing. Malvolio the Ridiculous, lost in the ecstasies of the famous love letter. Malvolio and his equally famous Yellow Garters. The laughter of bygone millions and the laughter of unborn millions to come can attest to their gigantic humor. But there was another Shakespeare, a lonely man. That love which so frequently fires the flames of genius was not to be his. And so one of his plays written early in his career remained his own favorite. An imperishable romance of young love, written in lines of matchless brilliance. Listen, perhaps we can hear it.
Why, Will, not drinking? What evil hue is this?
You look a lean and sorry figure like your own Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question.
Hush, Tom. I'm in no mind for jest.
Is it some other play that's eating at your mind? Some unhatched Othello or Macbeth clamoring for birth?
Think no more of it. Come, let's have another cup.
Eyes, look your last. Arms, take your last embrace. And lips, O you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss a dateless bargain to engrossing death. Come, bitter conduct, come, unsavory guide, thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick, weary bark. Here's to my love.
Romeo and Juliet, eh, Will? Pretty stuff, very pretty stuff.
Pretty stuff, you rascal rhymester. You addle-pated scurvy scribbler. Those words will be remembered long after rogues like you are nameless dust.
Romeo and Juliet. It could thrill audiences in the clumsy theater of Shakespeare's time when even the smallest illusion of reality was destroyed by the fact that no women appeared on the stage. And so Juliet, perfect embodiment of the passionate young girl in her teens, was enacted by a boy. And then this Romeo and Juliet, this great love story, was doomed to slumber patiently during the long years when the theater was driven out of existence by puritanic sentiment, only to awaken full-blown in the 18th century. The famous David Garrick played Romeo, and he beat on the hearts of his audiences even though the moonlight in Juliet's garden was so palpably supplied by a chandelier. I wonder what Will Shakespeare thinks when he sees, from high in the seventh heaven, his Romeo and Juliet on the motion picture screen. But could he have visualized this Juliet's garden in his wildest dreams? And some of them were wild indeed. Or do I really wonder what the master thinks when he sees the cinema's Romeo and the cinema's Juliet playing their version of their exciting lives? No, I don't wonder. Do you? For in all of Shakespeare's work there is, besides its passion, its drama, its tragedy, and its comedy, an ineffable hunger for beauty. A beauty which in the crudeness of his own times he could only express in the eternal beauty of his own words. Words like these. Age cannot wither, nor custom stale her infinite variety. Other women cloy the appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. Westminster Abbey is the final resting place of England's great immortals, but Master Will Shakespeare's dust is not enshrined there. In peaceful Stratford, beneath the tall, slim steeple of that church, rest the last remains of the number one man of the theater. Why? At his own request. Before his death, he wrote his own epitaph. Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust and close it here. Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he who moves my bones. And down through the centuries, no man has been willing to defy this request. Master Will Shakespeare, rest in peace, you who have given the world 1,000 deathless phrases, you who will speak from your humble grave as long as men are able to hear.